It's his show, Marianne.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
his show.
We'll save that for the October. The October one will be
Okay.
the Lord of Dragons.
Great. Yeah, can we turn the lights off now?
I'm stuck. Is that? I'm stuck. Oh, are you stuck?
All
Okay.
right. Okay, can everybody see that all right? Is that sharp for everybody?
Yes.
Gigantic seahorses.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, hi everybody. Welcome. Glad you were able to make it. My name is Marc, and I'm excited to talk to you a little bit tonight about my trip to Indonesia and a little bit about coral reefs and marine life in the Indo-Pacific, which is an amalgamism of Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean. So the Coral Triangle is a region that encompasses most of the Philippines, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands. And it is considered to be the most biodiverse region in the whole of the world's oceans. This is a pretty small corner, but there are more reef fish here, more species of coral than anywhere else in the world. It is often referred to as the Amazon of the oceans. There's something like 500 different species of coral that live in this area. I think more than 2,000 species of reef fish, and I think 6 out of 7 of the world's sea turtle species. So this is an incredibly dynamic area. There's also about 120 million people that live in this area, and a lot of them derive their livelihood and their food from the sea. There's a big fishing industry. A lot of tuna gets caught in this area. So really the health of this ecosystem is important to a lot of people. And so this winter I went to 2 different spots in this general area. I went to northeast Sulawesi Island right here in Indonesia, and I went to the Komodo Islands, which is right down here in southern Indonesia. And I got to dive and see scenes like this. This is a really healthy, vibrant reef system with a lot of different corals, different colors, different fish, and this is a really stunning. This is on a seamount in southern Indonesia, and I felt a sense of urgency in doing this trip because really, sadly, scenes like this are becoming increasingly rare in the world's oceans. There is a global phenomena happening right now known as mass bleaching, and I want to talk about that because I can't just show you nice, pretty pictures from underwater without addressing this really urgent issue. So corals are actually animals. Corals are in the animal kingdom, and the coral it's a colony of lots of little polyps that are in the same family as jellyfish and anemones. So this is a coral that I photographed, and if you zoom up real close, this is a nice close-up that I did with my magnifying lens, you can see all the little polyps. And they just share this big calcium skeleton as their home, but really the coral it's a colony of all these little animals. And each of these little polyps, so they live in their little skeleton. And so a really important feature of each of these little polyps is in their tentacles, right there, they have a symbiotic relationship with what's called the Zooxanthellae. It's a algae-like single-celled organism that it's a dinoflagellate. And they live inside the little polyp. The polyp provides it a safe place to live. It provides it plenty of carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and ammonium. The Zooxanthellae in turn photosynthesizes and gives the coral about 90% of its food. So the coral can feed itself, but not very well without these dinoflagellates. They're an incredibly important part, and they also are what give the coral its color. So corals are mostly greens and browns and reds, and all of that is from these dinoflagellates that live inside the coral. And so corals have a natural stress response that they've always had, which is known as coral bleaching. Coral bleaching happens when a coral gets stressed. So you have, like I just described, you have healthy coral, so the dinoflagellates are all happy and feeding and photosynthesizing, and the coral's doing well. when the coral becomes stressed, and stressors can include changes in water temperature, higher solar radiation, localized pollution, the relationship between the coral and the dinoflagellates breaks down. And the process of this is still, researchers are still understanding exactly why this happens, but the dinoflagellates end up being expelled from the coral. And there's some theories about that. One is that when the coral becomes stressed, there's a buildup of toxic oxygen molecules within the coral cells that make it impossible for the dinoflagellates to stay there. There's also a hypothesis that the coral actually willingly expels the dinoflagellates because it is hoping to repopulate itself with a different species that is more suited to whatever changes in the environment are occurring. And so when the dinoflagellates leave, the coral becomes sort of a ghostly white. We call it bleached. And in this state, the coral is very vulnerable, but it can survive. And in years past, in ancient history, that has often happened. Corals have bleached, and then they've repopulated themselves and they've lived on. And so this is a stress response that they've had. And localized bleaching is something that's been around for a while. But what is new now in today's world is we have, since in the last 30 years, we've been having huge ocean-wide mass bleaching events, which are being caused by huge, excessively large El Nino events, elevated ocean temperatures, all of which is the cause of man-made global warming. And so the scale and the amount of bleaching is unprecedented right now. We've had, since 1980, there have been more than 60 mass bleaching events across the world's oceans. The most destructive of which occurred in the 2014 to 2017 El Nino, which here there's some pictures from, this is American Samoa during that El Nino, and you see the transition from healthy coral to bleached coral to dead coral, and that's eventually just going to erode and turn into bare rock. And the amount of damage, this particular El Nino damaged about 70% of the world's coral reefs. And the numbers are absolutely staggering of the amount of damage that's been happening recently. About half of the Great Barrier Reef in Australia is now dead. About 80% of the Caribbean's coral reefs are gone. 70% around Okinawa, most of Thailand. It's absolutely staggering and really, really sad. And so I felt like I could not wait any longer to do a trip like this because, healthy reef ecosystems like this are going to become the exception and increasingly rare in our warming oceans. And the last places where we will still really see healthy reefs like this are places with a lot of water flow, a lot of current, which is where I was in southern Indonesia in Komodo. The currents are extremely strong. The water is actually fairly cold, and it's very challenging conditions for divers, and that is what's allowed those reefs to still look like this, because they're still getting, the water's cooler, they're getting more nutrients. Places like the Andaman Sea in Thailand, where you have a big enclosed bay, they're just really sad. So it was definitely a bittersweet trip for me to be able to go see this, knowing what's happening in the world today.
What's your depth there?
This right here is fairly shallow. This is a natural light image. I'm not using strobes, so this is probably about 25 to 30 feet. And my images vary, probably between surface to maybe 100 feet. And at the end of the talk, anyone's welcome to come check out the camera equipment I'm using. It's really basic stuff. I'm not using anything fancy, just a point and shoot camera and an underwater housing with a strobe. So, and here's another image where you just see, when you have a healthy coral reef ecosystem, it supports an incredible amount of fish. This is a seamount in southern Indonesia, and there's so many fish that you're almost just, you gotta push them out of your mask so you can see. It's really, really wonderful. Okay, so now that all the sad story has been told, I really just want to show you some beautiful images that I took, and I'll speak to some of them, and some of them are just self-explanatory. I've mixed my two locations of Sulawesi and Komodo together. Some of the images show sandy bottom, which is still a coral environment. They're just some sandy bottom pictures because they're a lot easier as a photographer. And then different depths and a lot of different creatures.
Now, lionfish is the one that's invaded the eastern U.S. and
Yes,
Caribbean.
they are in the Caribbean and in a lot of parts of the world. Lionfish are an invasive species. In the Pacific, they are not an invasive species, and there's a lot fewer of them. So,
And are there several species, or is it just lionfish?
There's multiple species.
there's,
Okay.
I
In fact,
mean,
there's a Hawaiian
lots.
lionfish,
Hmm.
same genus but different species. In fact, there's 2 different lionfish species in the invasion.
Oh,
yeah, oh, there's a lot. So this is a nudibranch, and I have a lot of pictures of nudibranchs, so I want to give it a quick explanation. A nudibranch is it's a snail, it's a mollusk, and it breathes through these gills on its back, which are outside its body. That's why they call it a nudibranch. And they come in lots of really extravagant colors, and I really like them. So you'll see plenty more. They all have really complicated names, and I didn't really feel like adding their names. I have some of their names, but they don't.
Is that about a couple inches?
Yeah,
Thicker?
thanks for asking that, Nancy. So I'm using a magnifying lens, so sometimes I'll mention the size of things because you can't really tell. This is probably a couple inches. But yeah, thanks. I'll point that out. There's some things here that are exceedingly small, and I'll you come up at the end. I can show you the little magnifying lens I'm using. But some of these animals are really tiny because I like small things. Really cool.
Beautiful composition.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy these. These to me remind me out of something out of a kid's drawing.
So what are the little round things in the background? Is that,
I think that's a good question. That might be some kind of an anemone or coral.
like attached to the rocks?
Yeah. Yep. This is another mollusk, probably a couple inches big. This is a sea urchin. The colors on it are just about as bright as what you see. It's, feels like a little disco dance party crawling around on the seafloor. And a little close-up study of it there, you can just see the colors of this thing. Really fabulous.
Do you know if it's iridescent?
It sure does. Yeah, I can imagine. I couldn't figure out what species this is. There's so many.
It's
of
called
them.
the fire urchin.
You know,
It's a no-touchy species too.
okay. Yeah. There's another nudibranch. That's also about a couple inches big. These actually do look like an orangutan when you look at them up close. I think it looks a little more crab-like in this image, but sometimes they're just posing just like an ape.
identify all these?
I have them written down.
No.
Yeah, not offhand, but I mean, I wrote them down at the time, and you know, but it, and I thought about including some of the, a lot of the nudibranch names are really not very inspiring. A lot of people, a lot of them are named after humans because, you know, people want to be named after something, or want something like this to be named after them, you know, so then, you know, they have silly human names, or, they're long, and I didn't feel like including them.
And are they poisonous because they got no shell?
They don't, nudibranchs are generally not poisonous as far as I know. They don't have a shell. That's a good question. Usually when you see something colorful like this in the animal world, it means don't touch me.
And it doesn't have a shell.
It doesn't have a
So
shell.
it's on target.
They move really slow. That's a good question.
If you touch it, does it curl up or contract or?
I've never tried that.
Not the less new
Uh, This is just a close-up black and white study of blue dragon nudibranch. The thing's got nice colors on it, but I really like the swirls in it, and so I zoomed away, and you can see that's its eye on the very left, and it's kind of a long body, and I really just enjoyed this in black and white.
They're widely distributed, as I've seen this in Hawaii.
Yeah, blue dragon nudibranch's pretty common. There's a lot of them. Yeah. And cuttlefish is in the squid family, and they always have a little mantle around their bodies that kind of oscillate as they swim about. Frogfish are in the anglerfish family, and they don't actually have scales. They have kind of a skin. They have a skin that looks kind of warty and ugly, and they're really good at changing colors, so they can hide because they're an ambush predator, and they can sit real still, and when something delicious swims by, they can expand their mouth to be enormous and swallow something twice their size.
How big is that one?
That is about, those are bigger, so that's not using my magnifier. That's probably about, 4 or 5 inches. Here's a different one of the same painted frogfish. And, it almost looks like a sponge with all those holes on it. And frogfish don't swim, they actually walk. And I had the privilege of watching this one waddle along. And you see why they're called frogfish. They have little frog fins, and they kind of waddle around on the seafloor. Really cool creatures. This one's fairly big. This one's probably 6 to 8 inches, a large one.
The darker colors that are on it, is that really a skin or is that just junk that is growing on it?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm not sure. I think it's its skin because they all have it, and it seems to be kind of part of their camo. And when you look them up, when I was looking up their species names online, all the drawings, the scientific drawings of them include this stuff. So either they all have it or it's part of their body. But I mean, blending in is an important part for them, and changing color is an important part of their hunting strategy. This is a fairly large octopus. It's probably the coconut octopus. It fits inside that shell. And you find them, it's all different ones. They like to hide out in little shells. I love the blue tentacles on it. Blue suckers.
think hermit crabs have some of the most charismatic eyes of any animal. A lot of eyes of these invertebrates to me are really stunning. This is an anemone, black and white study. So this is the same animal that I started the presentation with, the pygmy seahorse. And this animal is about 3/4 of an inch big. This is absolutely tiny. And this is the photo I submitted to the Iceworm Photo Contest. And this was incredibly difficult to take. This seahorse lives, so these pygmy seahorses spend their entire life on the same Gorgonian coral. And this, and very deep. So this one is in about 100 feet in a cave. And they all are down in this incredibly deep environment where it's very dark, and it was very hard to focus the camera on them. And then as soon as I pushed a button and flashed it, they went crawling off into their corals. They really don't like light. So this, I had a lot of pictures of their backs or their tails as they're scurrying off into the coral. And this required several tries, multiple trips to the same coral to visit these guys. And eventually I got lucky here and got a nice portrait, which I was really thrilled about. There it is again, just looking right at me. Yeah. And here you can see their body, and you see their little fins on the back and how they move about. It's really, really pretty little animals. They're just so small, and they blend into the coral extremely well.
Did you know to look for them, Mark?
I did, well, so each time I was diving, we had dive guides, because I'm going on, this is with established operations. I can't just go jump in the water in Indonesia and go figure it out. So the dive guides know they know where to find them, and these don't move, they stay on the same coral. So there's a couple on a coral, they know they're there.
Okay.
And so that also allowed us to go back, because the first time I was on this coral, I didn't produce any photos that I wanted to keep. And so there was a couple other photographers there who wanted to go back too, and so we made another trip just to this coral and spent a long time chasing them back and forth across the coral till we all had pictures we were happy with. Also known as a clownfish. These are way more aggressive than I thought they would be. I actually got attacked by a number of these. I think when they have young, they get really protective of their little home here on their anemone. And I had a few of them come out and just bonk me right into my mask. So this one posed. Another nice picture. It's just an idea of how vast the coral is in this area, how healthy. This is a fairly small octopus, but it changes colors really fast, and this is on the move.
Green?
Probably hospital, put the point on the thing.
Point on it? Okay, great. Yeah, so there's 6 different species of turtle that live in this area.
catching puffer fish.
Mhm.
Don't eat it. Who goes sashimi out of it? Kick the bucket.
I really like its eye. I think that's my favorite part of this fish is the eye. I think that's really striking. This porcelain crab is pretty small, probably about an inch or so, inch and a half perhaps. If you look closely, you can see she is pregnant. She's got eggs right down here under her little tail. And she's feeding, which was really nice. She was undisturbed by me. She's using her little feeding arms to filter particles out of the water and put them in her mouth. So it's really lovely, undisturbed.
So she's sitting on coral, those little white things
Yep.
of coral.
Yep, just kind of nestled in there. Yeah, I think this is an anemone. Yeah. Yeah, this is soft. Another nudie branch. Vibrant blue.
It's in the surgeon fish family. It's got the scalpels and the caudal peduncles. Those things by its tail there. Like razor blades, scalpels.
So it's the sturgeon family?
Surgeon fish.
Surgeon
Like-
fish.
Surgeon. Oh,
That would actually be in the genus Naso. The ones with the bumps on the head are the unicorn fish, which is one of the types of surgeon fish.
Yeah,
They're
that's
all in one genus, Naso, N-A-S-O.
similar to there's ones they have the unicorn
Rostrum
fish, they have a
sticking out,
big nose, pokey thing on their nose. Yep. Another great hermit crab. This one crawled up on a rock and faced me really nicely. This is at night too. It's really hard taking pictures at night, at least with my rudimentary camera setup. It's really hard to get my camera to focus in the dark. So I was trying to hold my flashlight on this thing and focus the camera at the same time. This one was very patient with me, which was nice. So I ended up getting a nice portrait. A really colorful nudie branch.
Were some things more active at night? Is that why you were?
Yes. There's certain animals that only come out at night. And it's the nighttime environment is quite different than the daytime environment. There's just certain animals that are only there during the day and some that are only there at night. And so it's worth seeing both. For me, very few of these pictures are during the nighttime because it was just so difficult for me to photograph at night. It's a lot more challenging because of especially the focusing. And my equipment just wasn't really set up for it.
How many night dives did they set up for you guys?
Oh, plenty. I mean, I don't really remember how many I did, but I came back from a lot of them with blurry images, because it's just, it's tough to get nice pictures at night. But some of them are. I'll point them out. I think this, I don't remember what time of day this was, but I know that hermit crab was at night. This is a type of coral.
It's a hydrocoral or not?
Were there any corals that you couldn't touch?
Like hydrocorals when you can't touch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't touch any of them, really. I mean, it's,
Good idea.
generally, especially in places with a lot of tourism, touching corals is something you really want to avoid because it's just an added stress to them. Another nudie branch.
of sway around with the water current. They almost seem like they, yeah. And they always have their mouth all gaping wide open. Strange looking animal. The scorpion fish, another rare Indo-Pacific fish. So the dive guide was really excited about this. This thing is about a quarter-inch or less. It's the size of a pinhead. And the dive guide insisted that I photograph this. I had no idea what the big deal was. This is a little snail, it's a little mollusk, and it has received a lot of fame in the social media world because it looks like a cartoon sheep out of a movie that I have not seen. There's some movie called Shaun the Sheep. It's a cartoon sheep movie, and this little mollusk looks. Here, I got another close up. It looks just like those sheep in that movie. You see, it's got little eyes right there, and it's got its little sheep horns. Yeah. So this is Shaun the Sheep is the name of this thing.
It's worth watching. The movie.
Yeah.
Is it good?
It's great.
Yeah.
We're fans.
Yeah.
You can come over.
Does this really look like the sheep in the movie?
Well,
I don't know.
yeah, it's a bit of a push.
Yeah, maybe if the photographer knows what they're doing, you could angle a shot more to make it look like it. I didn't. Yeah.
Was Cordova's sheep named Sean after this
Yeah.
Sean?
Yeah, Shaun the Sheep.
Oh, okay.
You can watch on YouTube or Netflix or Amazon. Shaun the Sheep is hysterical. It's well worth watching.
Some actually are in Indonesia. The first parts are in Indonesian or subtitled in Indonesian. Just the songs. It's interesting. Maybe that's.
Maybe that inspired this little guy. Yeah. Another nudie branch. This is a close-up. This is a bigger one. This is probably 3 inches or so, and I got up close and personal with it. Another image of just a natural light image of the coral habitat that I'm in. Again, just lots of different species of coral all on top of each other and fish, and really healthy. This is a Christmas tree worm. I really became very fond of them. They are in the annelid worm family, and they're beautiful. As you can see, all the colors and the little branches of them. And if you get too close, they just go, and they just disappear inside the coral and just gone. So it took me a while to learn how to approach them without making them disappear. But yeah, I find them really beautiful. This is a blue-ringed octopus. It is
Slightly venomous.
about 2 to 3 inches long, and it is considered to be one of the most venomous creatures in the sea. Each blue-ringed octopus has enough poison in it to kill about 26 adult humans. I don't know how they came up with that number. But,
Trial and error.
it is incredibly toxic, and people have survived it. Actually, it was just recently someone survived getting bitten by one of these. There was a child in Australia that picked up a little seashell and handed it to her dad, and Dad put it in his pocket, not knowing there was a blue-ring octopus in the seashell. The thing crawled out and bit him. Luckily, he was near a major hospital and he survived. But it induces paralysis, the toxin, complete body paralysis, and can kill within minutes. And these little octopus, they're called blue-ringed octopus because when they become agitated, when they feel threatened, the whole octopus turns bright yellow and it flashes big, bright blue rings. You can see here on a close-up, you can see its blue rings. It's just starting to show. I think it's maybe just mildly annoyed by my presence. But if they really mean business, those rings get much bigger and brighter and blue, and that's when you know it's time to back off. Striking nudibranch. This is a peacock mantis shrimp, and mantis shrimp this is fairly large. This is probably 6 to 8 inches long, and mantis shrimp are incredible creatures. They're very intelligent, and mantis shrimp are generally, there's a lot of different mantis shrimp species throughout the world. The peacock mantis shrimp is definitely the most colorful of them. They are predators, they're ambush predators. I don't know how this manages to hide with all these bright colors. But the mantis shrimp throughout the world are separated into 2 different groupings. There's ones that spear, and there's ones that smash. So all mantis shrimp have 2 little appendages in the front that they use to kill their prey, and some of the species have two really pointy spears that they use to spear things, and some are smashers. The peacock mantis shrimp is a smasher, so it has 2 little boxing arms, and it can strike its prey with the speed and impact of a .22 caliber bullet. And mantis shrimp are known to break the glass of aquarium and escape. They're smart enough to know that they're in an aquarium and that they want out, and they know that they can break the glass, and they do. So they're really hard to keep in an aquarium. So they're really, really cool animals. And another thing about the mantis shrimp that's really phenomenal is the mantis shrimp are believed to have the most advanced eyes of any animal in the entire world. These are considered, they have the most advanced visual system. Their eyes, which, see, I'll try the next picture too to see if you can see them a little bit. I'll stay with this one for now. I'll show you the next picture later. Their eyes move independently of each other, and you can see that when you swim up to them. They start watching you with one of their eyes, but the other eye is still kind of keeping a lookout for what might be coming behind them. And each eye has, you can see it has 2 hemispheres, a top and a bottom hemisphere, and that mid-band. And each of the hemispheres records an image of shape and movement. And so each of the 2 eyes has its own depth perception. So they have 2 separately moving eyes with their own depth perception. And then the mid-band gives it a color perception that is unmatched anywhere else. They can see from deep ultraviolet all the way to deep red and even polarized light. So they can see more colors than any other animal. Humans have 4 different photoreceptor cells, 3 of which can see color. The mantis shrimp has 16. And one way in which this helps them in their life is that mantis shrimp can only reproduce during one very specific time in the monthly tide cycle. So once a month they reproduce. And it is believed that they know when the right time comes because they can visually keep track of the moon phase. They can actually see from underwater what moon phase they're in. And so they know when it's time to start looking for a mate. Posed for me very nicely too. Another shrimp, different shrimp. pipefish. A long, skinny fish, and I think, again, the eye to me is probably the most striking part of the animal. I find that really, really beautiful. I love nudibranchs, in case you haven't noticed yet.
It's hard not to.
Yeah. This is the flamboyant cuttlefish. This was one of the animals I was most hoping to see on this trip, and I was really excited when I finally did. This is a male. It's very small. It's probably half an inch, 3/4 of an inch big. And if it wasn't for the camera, I don't think I could have fully appreciated it, because it was pretty dark. This is pretty deep. It was pretty dark. But it's just a lovely animal. It kind of walks. It was just little walking along the seafloor, and all its little arms are waving, kind of pulsating as it goes along. It's like it's dancing. Emperor shrimp. This is the bobtail squid, and bobtail squid, this one's probably about 1.5 to 2 inches big. Bobtail squid have a symbiotic relationship with a what's the name again? Bioluminescent bacteria inside their mantle. And these bacteria, they live in their mantle, and they copy the sunlight or moonlight coming to the water to help the squid hide. And so I'm not sure if that, I was just really caught by these striking little blue little galaxies inside the squid's mantle. I don't know if that is the bioluminescent bacteria. It could be, but either way, it's a gorgeous creature. There's a side view. These are popular aquarium pets too, apparently. This is a little crab. It's tiny. This is one of the most voracious predators of the sea. This is a night dive. The bobbit worm it's an annelid worm. It's probably about a couple inches wide, and they grow to about 10 feet long. And this worm lives in its wormhole in the sand. It has no eyes, 'cause it just sits there in the dark. And it has its little feelers out, and if a fish swims over it, the worm, sometimes all 10 feet of it, shoot out of the sand and grab the fish and pull it right back into the sand and eat it. And they can eat fish and other marine creatures much bigger than their own size. They're really, really cool.
Do we want to know how it got its name?
I looked it up. It's just some human, some scientist named Bobbit. Yeah, it's my favorite feature of these worms too is they glow fluorescent rainbow colors. So you kind of see that in this picture. It's hard to show this in a photograph, but if you shine your torch on them at night and then turn it off, the whole worm is just glowing like rainbow colors. It's incredible. So you've got this really menacing worm that's glowing like it's at a dance party. It's great.
Usually only how much is sticking up
Just this much. This is probably about as much as you usually see. This
So
one.
that'd be 2 inches, 3 inches?
Yeah, this is like 2-3 inches. I got another picture here, but yeah, I mean they all 6 to 10 feet can shoot out of the hole at once if it needs to. Yeah, there's a lot of great videos online too. If you ever are bored on a rainy day, just search bobbit worm feeding videos. Your day will be much better. Ghost pipefish, Harlequin ghost pipefish. I couldn't quite spell that out on the slide. They kind of. The mouth is at the bottom. This is its eye. Is right here. That's its eye. That's its mouth. That's its top. And they kind of just drift around. I saw a couple different ghost pipefish, and it's just sort of gently swaying in the current. They're not really moving very hard. Another seamount picture here. The seamounts are really hard to photograph because the currents were just immense. The current will be going one way 1 minute and then going the other way and then going up and then going down. So, and there's just so much going on too. It was really hard to focus on what I wanted to photograph, and light changes quickly, and it's just really having to focus a lot on dealing with the current. So. It's hard getting good pictures, but I like how this turned out.
These are Moorish idols. The two fish.
The 2 fish? Moorish idols?
Zanclus cornutus.
Nice, thank you.
There's a cleaner wrasse just above the one on the right.
Mm-hmm.
The pink fish, you mean?
No, the thing with the stripe.
To the left of the pink fish, yeah, I see that. Yep.
The pink fish is probably an anthias.
Uh-huh.
An anthias, one of those.
You know what this is?
I would know, but I see a fish on top
Yeah.
of it.
I think it's a type of scallop, but I couldn't figure this out for sure. It's definitely a bivalve, and I think it's a scallop. But, yeah, there's a fish on it too.
The shell itself has got some groin on it, you can't recognize the shell
it's
anymore.
hard to ID. Yep, and exactly.
How different does it look at night when because you have to have the lights on all
Yeah.
the time? I mean, does it look totally different than during the day?
Yeah, I mean the colors are similar. At night, so all of these images I'm using a flash for most of them. There's a few natural light images, sort of the bigger coral where you see the I'll point them out, coral images. But as you descend deeper underwater, more and more light is being absorbed, and so you lose, colors disappear. Things become just kind of grayish blue, and so to restore the colors in these photographs, the flash is absolutely essential. And so at night, when you're diving at night and you're using your flashlight, that also can restore a lot of color. So you actually see a lot of, your eye can see a lot more color at night sometimes. But on these photographs, like this particular scene right here, just with your bare eyes would probably be more sort of a bluish tint to it. And so the colors do come back when you shine a light on them.
Emperor angelfish there.
Emperor angelfish, and it's inside a big sponge. And you see in the background just how many fish are swimming around there. It's just like, it's raining fish.
Must be the emperor's throne.
Yeah, yeah, it's great.
Apparently, those have been sighted in Hawaii, but they're not, they don't live there. Someone threw it out of an aquarium, but it's in all of Hawaii. The bigger Hawaii fish bugs.
Okay.
One was spotted in Oahu a number of years ago.
These are pretty large. These are probably 8 to 10 inches big. Big fish. Boxfish. Very shy. You notice I have a lot fewer fish pictures than I have invertebrate pictures, and a lot of that's because fish can tell when you're coming for them. It's, you know, you'll be swimming along and they'll be doing their thing, and as soon as I held the camera up and pointed it at them, they turn around and are out of there. So I chased this boxfish around this coral a couple times before I got a front-on picture of it. But yeah, fish are hard to photograph. They really, they can tell when you're giving them too much attention.
Don't feel bad, Mark, I had 3 moose do the same thing to me today.
They can tell too, yeah.
Yeah, they just stood there till I got my camera up, and then they ran off.
Specially trained.
Yeah. Coral picture. These are tabletop corals, is what these are called. Create quite an environment for all these fish to live in. So that's more of a natural light picture, so that's not using a flash, and you know, see how blue and gray that is, and that's generally kind of what your eye. I think the eye will see a little more color than the camera lens can at this point. So, you know, and I think our brain compensates a little bit too. So it's not quite that blue, you know, to you underwater, but there's definitely a lot less color. That's a very large sea turtle.
That would make a good 1,000-piece puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really a nice photo. Very
Thank
nice.
you. This is a manta ray. Their wingspan can be up to 15 to 18 feet. So this thing is huge. And they glide along really effortlessly and gracefully in these incredibly high currents. So the place where these, I have a few manta ray pictures I'll show now. The place where I photographed all these is in one of the highest current spots in the whole area I was diving in. I was using a reef hook, a hook attached, I had a line attached to me and a hook at the end, and whenever one of these rays showed up, I would try to hook myself into a rock so I could hang on to the rock with the line and stay somewhat stable and try to photograph these rays. But then, you know, sometimes this thing is just gently soaring by me and the rock starts to roll or the rock comes out and I go just tumbling off. It's very challenging. And they just, you know, they go against the current like it's nothing. And sometimes they're very playful in the way they swim too. They'll dart around. They'll just be slowly swimming and feeding, and then suddenly something spooks them, and they dart around. Or this one flipped on its back. And yeah, it's amazing to see an animal this large swim like that. And, let's see, I have a little video here. See if we can, just to kind of give a sense of what the motion looks like when this one's feeding. It's just such gentle and graceful flyers underwater.
What are they eating,
They're filter feeding. I believe they're eating little plankton in the water. Yeah, they just big wide open mouth. I was not able to identify this. If anybody knows, that'd be great. This
It's
is
a crinoid. It's a type of a echinoderm.
crinoid. Okay, great. Yeah, I figured it was in the echinoderm
phylum, and, yeah, okay, crinoid. And this is swimming, so it actually was, you can see that in the next picture. There. You can see it was just kind of like swimming, pulsating through the water. Really beautiful. One of my favorite nudie break pictures. I had a long photo session with this guy. This one was just posing and moving and crawling, and I probably have,
Must be from Ireland.
yeah, I have about 30 different pictures of this one, but this is my favorite one. And the back, the
Well, the contrast in
yeah,
colors.
sponge that it's on is so bright. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is very lightly. I don't doctor my images a whole lot. You know, I adjust a few things just to make up for the color loss underwater, but this is pretty much what the eye would see. It was all that bright and colorful. Another natural light reef picture. Christmas tree worm again. They come in all different colors.
So is that two worms or one?
That's two,
Okay.
side by side.
Do you know what the green thing is behind them?
I don't. That's a good question. It's definitely on. It's on a coral. They live on
I
coral.
read it's an amphipod, I can see a couple of antennae there on the right.
Huh. There's another one, a different one. This is the world's largest clam. This is probably 3 to 4 feet long.
This individual or the species?
The species, I mean, this individual too, but these are giant clams. Are the largest clams in the world. They are really big. There's smaller ones. This was a big one.
So is it open with it spread kind of left and right?
Yeah. So you're looking at. This is its shell right here,
Yeah.
and then this is the inside of the clam. So it's open right now, and it's facing upward. The opening is facing upward, and
Did you swim in and lie down?
you almost
Climb
could.
up on you.
You almost could. You know, and the colors of it are just amazing too. Yeah.
All of the old underwater films, a diver would get stuck in one of those. That's a standard thing to have in the movie.
It's like China.
Yeah.
Did you see a lot of it?
Yeah. Yep. There's quite a few of them around there, and some of them are maybe just a few inches long, and then some of them are feet. You know, and some of them are just huge.
There are places where they've been over harvested, and so they're trying to replace them. People do eat these.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It seems like there'd be a lot of food in one of these. That's cool.
Angelfish.
Mm-hmm.
This is butterfly.
Butterfly fish. blue-spotted stingray, which will sting.
Don't lie on top of it, like what's his face did, the crocodile hunter guy.
Is this the stingray that?
No, I think it was a bigger one that killed him. Starfish there.
So is that big thing a coral or is it some kind of anemone?
This is a coral, so this whole thing here is a coral. And so this is all hard skeleton, and the tips are blue. Yeah.
It's one you won't find in Hawaii though. Acropora.
This is an acropora?
It's an acropora, yeah.
Right.
Very common in the tropics, but Hawaii, they got wiped out during the Pleistocene and are still recolonizing.
Huh. This is a fairly small sea cucumber. This is about a few inches big, and sea cucumbers have a charismatic defense strategy where they eviscerate their own guts to ward off an attacking predator. And as they're expelling their guts, they also have a poison around their guts that can kill things around it. And they happily regrow their guts within a few weeks.
Is that the guts there?
No, this one's not threatened.
Oh,
No,
yes.
this is you're looking at its mouth. So this is the mouth of the sea cucumber. That is its anus over there. So that's where the guts would come out if it was.
We have a red one that's similar to that, that's found around here. You usually just see the feeding tentacles in between rocks, low tide, or it's rocky intertidal, cucumber area, very common around here.
All right, I'm going to end with a video, just because sometimes the video gives just a nice sense of the scale of how healthy this reef was, how many different corals there are all around.
Very many sharks.
There were a few sharks. Yeah, there was a few. Didn't have any photographs of them that I was really pleased with. So, but yeah, white tip reef sharks, black tip reef sharks.
Did you see whale sharks?
I wish. They do live in this area, but I didn't see one.
It's called the cucumber area, and then you know.
Okay, so that's it.
Actually,
Thank you very much. It's the only terrestrial photograph I included here, but I'll gladly answer any questions or anybody
It
wants
would have
to.
been a really good show if you had a Komodo dragon.
You want to see a Komodo dragon?
I'm joking.
Give me a minute and I'll produce one for you.
It was great.